Welcome to the Adrenal Fatigue podcast with your hosts, Danielle Zeese and Angela Rocchio. Balancing your hormones and overcoming adrenal issues can feel really complicated. Our mission is to break it all down in a simple way and offer you realistic solutions so you can get back to living the vibrant life that you deserve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adrenal Fatigue podcast with your hosts, myself, Angela Rocchio, and my lovely partner, Danielle Zeese.
Hello, everybody.
And with us today to help us explore today's topic is one of our in-house naturopathic doctors, Effy Germanis. Welcome, Dr. Effy. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So today's episode, we're talking about something that so many of our adrenal fatigue clients suffer with, and that is weight loss. Dr. Effy is going to give us some clarity on weight loss and adrenal fatigue, why this is so common and such a struggle for so many of our sufferers. And she's also going to give us some awesome tips that we can all, that those who are looking for great tips can really apply. So we're super excited. So before we dive in, Dr. Effy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm a registered acupuncturist practicing in beautiful Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've been practicing for a little over 2 years now, so that's very exciting. I've seen a number of clients for different conditions, but when it comes down to it, it's always looking at the foundations of health. But my area of focus is hormones, fatigue or adrenal issues, pain management, and gut-related issues as well. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic. There's always room for learning so much more, even for myself as a practitioner.
So true. Yes. Well, cool. We're really excited to dive in. So let's do this.
Yes, let's do it. And we know in the adrenal fatigue community, weight loss is a huge issue. And even the way that our body gains weight when we're struggling with our hormones, it seems like it gains weight more rapidly and it becomes a lot harder to lose. So we're really excited to dive into this topic with you today, Effy. And let's just jump right in. Like, why is weight loss so difficult for those that suffer with these adrenal related conditions and hormonal imbalance?
Well, first things first, everyone's dealing with some sort of weight issue because we're always trying to attain optimal health, and we usually see weight as our main kind of reason to do so. And it doesn't literally have to be the pounds on the scale. We just feel heavy. We don't feel healthy. And adrenal issues really come down to, again, the hormonal aspect, right? It's not so much about adrenal fatigue, though. That's a really key culprit, but our hormones become imbalanced, and the main cause is this stress. And we're always under stress. And in primitive times, stress was an adaptation to keep us healthy and alive because we were able to flee danger and avoid being eaten, say, by a bear. But nowadays, stress is just this ongoing issue that really many people don't feel stressed, but they are stressed, where our mental capacity is always at max. We're always thinking about tomorrow, what happened yesterday. We're worried about the end of the month finances. We're worried about deadlines. And we truly don't know how to balance this because we're in this society now that everything's always stimulating. Our phones are stimulating us from the morning till night, affecting us. And it's not until we hit stages of this adrenal fatigue that many of the followers here are dealing with that we realize what's going on and what's happened and how have we lost that control. And so it does come down to hormones. It comes down to our lifestyle. It comes down to the foods we eat and how we eat those foods as well.
For sure. And a lot of the time with adrenal issues, of course, we feel tired. So it's not like we're able to go, kill it at the gym and feel like we don't have that energy for that. So in that sense, I think many people feel unproductive when they feel really fatigued, though. Of course, we know that can kind of go the total opposite direction and actually make things worse with your hormones if you are trying to push yourself too hard, right? So it really is all about finding that balance.
Yeah, and a lot of people that are in various stages of adrenal fatigue or dealing with, the beginning stages of just not feeling well, we think, okay, I got to go to the gym. I have to go do this. And we're pushing it to the extreme, which actually is counter affecting what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of women, especially because more women are prone to take advantage of their health, but men as well are seeing, I'm working out and I'm eating right, yet I'm still gaining weight. And it confuses them, because then it's kind of that hopelessness. So rather than thinking about diets, I look about what foods we're eating and how we're eating it, when we're eating it, because that's a very big piece. And then also balancing, exercise is great. But again, as many of the group information that you guys have provided, from the nutritional aspect to the naturopathic aspect, there's different stages, and different types of exercise are very important. We need to support the body at that moment, how it's feeling. And that's the biggest hurdle for many of our followers and many people dealing with adrenal issues.
Totally. We always say that adrenal fatigue is a state of depletion, right? It's about nourishing the body back up. And when you think about it, going to the gym and really having these huge workouts breaks things down, right? So you have to be able to recover from that. But when your body's already trying to recover from something greater, you can see how this can kind of pile up on each other and just contribute to a lot of stress that, maybe with the exercise part, that's an area that you can really reduce the stress on your body rather than adding a lot when your body needs that nourishment and that building back up. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, I think there's just so much of this kind of like outside pressure, right, to have, even if people are trying to lose weight, and hormones are often the culprit. And so before they even land in adrenal fatigue, that's actually that needing that physique or trying to work out of the gym to lose that weight. Little do they know what's really going on underneath all of that. And so then, a lot of people, that come to us, right, our clients come to us, after trying to do way too much at the gym and being weightlifters and, really serious about, intense workouts, and they land in burnout. So it's interesting because our world is such a go world. And again, then we go, like you were saying, to the gym and try to have this certain physique. And we really, and the stimulation of cell phones, it's like we haven't quite figured it out in our society, like how to really take care of ourselves on a deeper level. I think that's really, obviously there's a lot here, but that's a big piece, is that we really, we don't learn that stuff in school, and it's not necessarily fostered very much in this society.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a good point. And there is a lot here in this question. And Effy, you said it could be hormone related. Well, in a lot of cases, we're talking about weight gain as like a hormonal kind of issue right now. So what are some other factors that could make it difficult to lose weight? Like, what about things like muscle wasting when it comes to hormonal issues or adrenal fatigue, or anything else?
Yeah. So when we talk about hormones, I think many of us initially go to sex hormones. We think about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. In regards to weight, those are actually going to support our weight. When we're talking we're talking about hormones like cortisol. We're talking about hormones like leptin and ghrelin. We're talking about hormones like insulin. And what we're seeing a lot of issues, and this is where the weight issue is coming up, and we're seeing an emergence of diabetes type 2, is this blood sugar dysregulation. And that is what's happening. We're getting those hype, straight up energy, and then crashes because of the foods we're eating or when we're eating it. Our sleep, especially for adrenal fatigue, and whatever stage we're in, sleep is always disrupted, and that circadian rhythm, that normal circadian rhythm, gets disrupted. And then your body is just not understanding what's morning, what's night, and then we have that stimulation. So I think when we talk about hormones, we need to understand we're actually talking about more of those digestive blood sugar regulating hormones. cortisol, right? We know when people are stressed out, cortisol is spiking. We're secreting more sugar into our bloodstream. And what's happening? Insulin's coming in and saying, oh, we got to put this in the cells. We got to store it. And then we get fat accumulation. So looking at the types of foods, but also the times we're eating it. Our body has a natural circadian rhythm, whether we look at it from a TCM perspective or from a Western perspective or a naturopathic perspective. The clock is still the same. It's just named slightly different. But we do have that circadian rhythm. So we want that cortisol rising in the morning. It's waking us up. That's important. And within the first half hour, we're usually getting hungry. It starts to decline throughout the day and comes down low at the end of the day. And then we have melatonin coming up. But those hormones get dysregulated from exposure, from stress, from foods we're eating. And then there's going to be changes that are happening. And these changes don't happen overnight. It does take some time. So those are the hormones, I think, that are playing a very key role. And in that sense as well, whether it's muscle wasting, as you're saying, Danielle, or issues with energy, we're going to be fluctuating up and down. Our body's going to overdrive and then underdrive. And so we're having this imbalance, and we're not going to build muscle because we're not going to get nourished, right? We know stress has its effects. So we'll probably get into that in a little bit. So I won't overwhelm in this one answer. But we're seeing this imbalance that's happening, and a lot of the weight issues coming to the blood sugar dysregulation that we don't think about. But when you look at studies and you look at the biochemistry of it, it's all that. That's what's playing the big key role there.
Yeah. And blood sugar, of course, foundational and fundamental issue at the heart of most hormonal and even adrenal issues. Like, we have to get the blood sugar in check. But of course, when we're feeling like our circadian rhythm is messed up, when we're feeling really tired, a lot of the times what comes into play when we're having those ups and downs, like you mentioned, Effy, the glorious cravings, a lot of sugar cravings for things like coffee. We're trying to get that blood sugar up quickly to make us feel better, to give us more energy. And the foods we often find ourselves reaching for in that time, especially when we're tired, isn't always the most supportive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we often hear the word cortisol belly. And we'd love to tell our community more about what is the cortisol belly, because it's something that you can actually notice on people, like when you're walking down the street, right? Like, it's something that is kind of prominent and a lot of people are struggling with it. So what is a cortisol belly exactly? Like, what does that mean, and how the heck do we get rid of it?
So cortisol belly is kind of what we were just touching upon. It is due to this stress response, right? We're secreting cortisol. And we know when we secrete cortisol, we're going into the sympathetic alert stage. Our body is secreting epinephrine, norepinephrine. We're pushing sugar into the bloodstream so we can feed the muscles, because at any moment we might need to run or we might need to put up a fight. In regards to this short term, that's great. We want to save ourselves from a dangerous situation. But when we're continuously stimulating this cortisol pathway, whether it's that mental stress, physical stress, whatever it is, we continuously put sugar into the bloodstream. We're breaking down glycogen stores in the liver, and we're putting it into the bloodstream. And insulin, in response, is saying, nope, too much blood, and storing it as fat. And it usually gets stored in certain areas like the belly. And some individuals, it can get stored in the thighs, but primarily it goes into the belly area. And that's why we call it the cortisol belly. It's that secondary response of our body adapting or trying to cope with the increased blood sugar into the bloodstream. Others, we're seeing a rise also of fatty deposits on the liver. This also plays a little bit role in our detoxification pathways, but a lot of things the body does sometimes doesn't make sense in the long run, but it's an adaptive process in protecting itself. We see calcium deposits on bone, and this is where we get spurs and fusions. It's just a way it's trying to cope with the inflammation or the irritation to the system, and that's what's happening.
So interesting. So for a visual for everyone, is the cortisol belly is kind of like, is it like that dad beer belly that we're kind of used to being around?
I think it's more like that little muffin top. So a dad belly is a little bit bigger. It could get to that situation. But what we're seeing is like that muffin top where we're rising and we're just spilling over slowly, and then it starts to get more and more extreme, again, depending on other issues that might be prominent for that individual. But it's that lower end, it's not super high up, it's that lower end just spills over those pants kind of situation where you're just like, what is this? Where did it come from? And why is it happening? And then we create the vicious cycle, and we start to stress out, we start to worry about our health, and then we create more of an aggravation of symptoms in the long run from it.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's, and you think about, I think about when you're talking about this, Effy, is, just the kind of the common diet we have today, right? Where, I mean, definitely in the US, and it's like, I'm not saying that there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure, that have been working on their diet and not having this type of lifestyle, but where you wake up and it's like avocado toast or toast with eggs, and then for lunch you have a sandwich, and then for dinner you have pasta. And so it's like that, because that's a whole other conversation, but I think it makes me think of this sort of pattern that we've sort of gotten in with our eating habits. And like you were talking about, that's like, Danielle, where that's often where it's where we can reach. It's sometimes the food part and eating healthy is overwhelming in the moment, and overwhelming for, this fast-paced lifestyle that we like to live, and kind of going from one thing to the next. So those things are really easy to kind of just nourish in the moment, but not really nourishing for our body or helpful for blood sugar and all of that. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I noticed this a lot when I first moved to Asia, and I notice a lot working with clients one-on-one with their diet as well. Like a turkey sandwich in theory sounds really healthy. Like if from my past, like when I think about a turkey sandwich, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a healthy lunch. And it can be a pretty healthy lunch, but it's so easy to overdo it in the portions with like these big crusty baguettes that they're served on in bakeries, like the servings of the carbs that you're getting in one meal that become a standard for us. It truly sabotages our health. And like you said, it's an avocado toast for breakfast. It's like a chicken salad wrap for lunch. And then it's like a pasta dinner. And you don't realize how much gluten is actually sneaking into your world. And when I moved to Asia and all of a sudden all of that stuff was all gone, it was really interesting how my body changed. And I wasn't eating like that all the time, mind you, but I noticed like how more often I was like inclined to like reach for those things because they were around, they were social, they were more convenient. And I noticed the changes in my body and my energy, but especially like the shape of my body when I really reduced gluten in my diet. And I know you guys have had personal experiences. We've seen it hundreds of times with clients too. Like sometimes just a small tweak to the diet makes a huge difference. And I think this is a great segue into the next question which was, what can we do to like start tackling this weight in a healthy way without stressing out the body more? So what are your tips, guys?
Well, I'll start with the non-food because I know, Danielle, you can get into a lot more of the food details. But one thing I've noticed, and I've been doing some reading, is, I was talking about at the beginning, is how we're eating, right? The foods, it's not so much, it is the food we are eating 100%, but it's how we're eating or when we're eating. So many people are on the road driving and eating, right? When we eat, we want to be in that parasympathetic state. We want to be in that pro-digestive state. So we're go, and we're eating on the go. So we're not really stimulating digestive enzymes. We're not allowing the body to get into that stage of, oh, hey, we're not running from a bear, so let's sit down and we can actually eat. Because if the body feels stressed out, it's not eating. It's not doing the immune. It's not doing the support and the repair. It's saying we need to build sugars and we need to run. So I find that we schedule so many things into our planner. I think we need to start scheduling meals. And the next thing is eating at times that are important for our body. Again, it comes down to that circadian rhythm. when we wake up in the morning, there's a lot with different diets, like ketogenic and the fasting, which I think is very beneficial, but we also need to be careful to know what state of health we are when we're doing that. But when we're talking about when we eat, we need to be eating when the light is out. We need to eat in the morning when we wake up, within our half an hour to an hour of waking up. We can still do fasting from the night before if that's something you're really keen on. You can still do the 16 hours, because if you stop eating before sunset, you have the 16 hours by the time you wake up. So that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. kind of schedule of eating meals. And then from there, scheduling in your meal times. And then we're going to talk about the specific types of foods, right? We want nutrient-dense foods. We want whole foods. Processed foods, empty nutrient foods, they just pound on calories and they don't feed us. So that's why we always feel hungry. And then our cravings, in the beginning, it's going to be very hard. In Chinese medicine, the spleen and stomach together function as the digestive system. And one weakness of spleen is stress, and it becomes what we call damp, and it doesn't function properly. And when it's dysfunctional, its craving is sweets. So it's kind of that vicious cycle, and we see that people who are tired are craving the stimulating foods like sweets, caffeine, and other types of stimulants to function. So I think even if we step back and say, okay, let's not approach the meals just yet, if that's something that's super hard, especially if you have a family or it's just really hard to shop, or monetary aspects can be very hard because, again, organic is hard, we're still going to approach that. But maybe just start with eating before with the sun time, so morning to night, not snacking in between meals, so making sure you're getting enough of your fats and proteins and carbohydrates to a minimum, but you still need carbohydrates, and then not eating after sunset. And by the time you wake up the next morning, once again, you've passed that craving portion, you've passed that intermittent fasting, and you're kind of moving towards controlling and setting up your circadian rhythm properly. And then at least then as you start to change the foods, you're going to see more drastic changes in your weight and your energy.
Yeah, I really love that. And that's the approach that I've kind of fallen into lately myself. And a lot of people with adrenal fatigue, when you're not sleeping well, and it only takes 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep to put your body into a pre-diabetic state. So then you wake up in the morning. If you push yourself and you're trying to fast until noon or something because you want to do intermittent fasting, you're probably going to feel pretty tired, first of all, if you haven't slept well. So a lot of the people in the adrenal fatigue community can relate to this. And having a really good breakfast upon rising can really level things out and give you nice, stable energy through the morning if you're fueling yourself properly. So I think breakfast can be really powerful. And like you said, Effy, I think it's great to save the fasting for in the evening when you're winding down, if that's something that you're practicing. So have a nice dinner, and then after that, and I think this is what's great about this approach is that when you have that 7 o'clock or 7:30, 8 o'clock cutoff time, you're eliminating any wiggle room for the nighttime eating that's really problematic for a lot of people. Like, people get those after dinner cravings, and then a lot of people are kind of do okay during the day, and then it's that night eating that really throws them off course when it comes to diet, and that can have a huge impact on your weight. So I love that approach, the intermittent fasting approach, but just having a cutoff time in the evening that works for you. And if you're not sleeping well, especially fueling yourself with a really, really good breakfast. And the addition of digestive enzymes is a beautiful thing. So that's great. I love that you mentioned that, Effy.
I feel like there's a couple things that I have found to be helpful with clients is whether you aren't doing intermittent fastings, is this idea of having something, if you do have those nighttime cravings, is like plan ahead of, like, if you know you're that person who has to have that, then, coming up with some good ideas, like maybe just a little dark chocolate, or, instead of reaching for like that, I don't know, ice cream or whatever you might want to go to in that moment of kind of being tired, but knowing that you wanted to like eat something before you go to bed. It's like, grabbing the apple and maybe having some apple with some almond butter before, or, switching that up a little bit, just making those little shifts in those. I found that that's helpful to have some ideas up your sleeve for those times that are really challenging for you, the parts of the day that you kind of go to the foods that aren't going to support a restful sleep, or this blood sugar balance we're talking about here.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times people won't like me for saying this probably, but I know it to be true, but the nighttime eating is really habitual. Like, we just get into habits, right? We like sweet things after dinner. Like, we've done that since we were kids, right? So a lot of the times, if that's you, if you don't have major hypoglycemic issues going on, and for sure if you do, then having healthy snacks on hand to support nice stable blood sugar throughout the night is definitely a better option. But a lot of people aren't opting for, aren't necessarily opting for the greatest choices sometimes with the nighttime eating. That we kind of see that commonly. So yeah, I love that, having better ones. And then considering, is this like something that is more habitual? And if you guys are interested in maybe a good read on how you can shape these habits that we've had for a long time, Atomic Habits by James Clear is a really good book that kind of talks about addressing these little habitual things that chip away at our health or whatever it is we're working on. And I love that book for this type of thing.
And even our cookbook that you created, Danielle, is such a good resource for people, and such a good way to get like over 70 recipes of anything from tonics and elixirs to, the most yummy smoothies you can imagine, all very gut healing as well. And so I think that that's a fabulous resource to mention here, that just gives you some other ideas to pull from, snack ideas, meals, alternatives to coffee and caffeine. So that's wonderful. So go ahead and check that out on our website.
Yeah. I'll link it below in either the video link or the podcast link, so everybody can have access to that. For sure, you'll get some inspiration and a guarantee that the recipes are balanced. So if you're looking for some ideas, that's a great one. But Effy, while we have you here, what else would you add to this list? Like, what else can we do to support this? I feel like we could talk about the diet, which is obviously really important till the cows come home. But there's anything else that comes to mind when it comes to supporting weight loss in a healthy way that you could recommend to everyone out there who's struggling?
Yeah. So for one, just touching last minute on the diet aspect, Danielle, you have the cookbook. Other people, there's many cookbooks that we've bought. I think the key thing is that meal planning, having that food planned out for the week. If you know that it's going to be hectic and busy, if you have a busy work schedule, making sure you're nourishing yourself. I think cravings and those habits, will be easier to kind of deter from because you're feeling full. I was noticing myself, I was always a snacker because I would eat breakfast, I eat lunch, eat dinner, but I was like, why am I hungry between meals? And I reassessed the foods I was eating and realized I was missing a key fat. Like, I wasn't getting enough fat. And then I was actually satiated till lunch. I could last 5.5 hours till lunch and wouldn't have a snack. And I also didn't have cravings for the sweets because I didn't feel tired. But I know a lot of adrenal issues or even weight issues, we're getting those hangry states, right? We get hungry and angry, and we've all dealt with that in some way or another. So having good snacks on hand that are going to be nourishing and supportive is going to be really important there as well. Is finding that balance. I think we put a lot of emphasis on, taking time for events and taking time for others, but not really taking time for ourselves. And it's not till we're hit in that exhaustion phase that we realize, like, we need to take care of ourselves. You have one body to live in, but you have so many days to live in it. So it's not just one day, every day, enjoy it. So having that balance. So it doesn't mean you have to go to the gym every day to lose weight. about having that balance, starting your morning off with journaling, doing some exercise of some sort. You don't even have to go to the gym. You can do simple jumping jacks and some planks, right? Just to start off, create that rhythm. Don't set the bar so high that it's unattainable. Something got stuck in my throat. But we want to make those baby steps. We need to make the changes we're making a habit, and it takes 21 days minimum to make a habit. So finding that balance between rest and exercise. And I'm not talking about rest, sleep. Sleep is one key piece, and making sure we're getting enough sleep. So making sure we're creating that nighttime routine, whether it's a bath, whether it's stretching, whether it's reading a great book, coloring, whatever it is that you'd like to do, reading to your kids before bed, right? We create that nighttime routine. We avoid those stimulating lights, TVs, laptops, cell phones. The biggest thing is bringing that cell phone into the bedroom. And I've been, one person who's done that initially, and I started realizing my sleep started getting later and later. And so I cut it out, and I'm back to my early sleep regimen. So creating those things for yourself, because it takes only an extra 5 minutes, which we have that 5 minutes. We always believe we don't have enough time, but you'll feel so much better that 5 minutes gives you, 10 hours of attentiveness and clarity in your work you're doing and the energy to do it, because you got movement in. The body needs movement. The body needs stress release, relaxation, grounding, deep breathing in the middle of the day, just sitting down, saying, I'm taking 2 minutes, I'm going to deep breathe, get myself into a calmer state when you feel really stressed out or angry. I do that sometimes. I'm always stuck in traffic. So that's the perfect time to do those deep breathing exercises and just calm out. So little things like that, I think finding the little things you like to do and setting yourself up for success, I think is the key thing for the weight loss. I believe weight loss will come easily once we balance all those other aspects and making time for ourselves in the long run.
I love that. And I want to bring a shout out to being a mama, all those moms out there, because, there's, that can be challenging. And I think for all of us, it's challenging, but for moms, there's another element that goes in there. And I think what I'm learning about over years of doing this work is it's really about learning to honor ourselves. And you were talking about, Effy, our bodies, and spending time, preparing our food. And I know I'm not saying you have to be this amazing cook and spend hours in the kitchen, but I am starting to really I've been gluten-free. I've been on every elimination diet there is known to man for the past 15 years. I've experimented with a lot, and I actually feel like it's taken me about 10 years where I'm finally at the point where I'm enjoying the process of food preparation, because it's almost like my time to be creative. It's my time to honor me. I'm a goddess, my body is my temple, and how I treat it makes a difference. And, I don't think we're really, again, I'm going back to that, my soapbox of I don't think we learn these things at a young enough age of how food prep. I grew up in the 80s, and fast food was a big thing, and it started to become more popular, and frozen pizza and all of those things, where meals, really the process of creating a meal and sitting down and eating it kind of got lost. And so it's this idea of that is a special time. And it sounds cheesy, but putting love into your food when you're making it and being oh, how is this food going to totally nurture my body? And I'm going to be able to digest it beautifully. And it's going to be this great thing. And so really honoring that process of eating to help with your digestion. One more tip for the mamas is, even if you are eating in the car, you find yourself eating in the car, it happens a lot. You're trying to get the kids out of the house, and it takes me an hour to take my kids to school just because of traffic. And, if you're eating in the car, at least take a few deep breaths before, you eat that thing. Because you will probably find yourself in that position. And I find that if I just, take a few moments to breathe and sort of just say out loud, okay, I'm eating this food and I'm going to digest it well, and just being really conscious in that moment, it just takes a second. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Effy, what you said earlier about just even planning for your mealtime, I think that's important because it's so often, right? We do get caught eating in the car. It's going to happen eventually. Life gets in the way. But I always say, like, prep, it's kind of like prep or forget about it. Our lives are so busy now. We get hungry. If we haven't planned ahead, if we haven't prepped healthy options, it's so easy to reach for something, there's a lot of healthy options that we can reach to in this day and age. So we're lucky in that sense, but sometimes what's convenient or what's available or what we're craving at that time when we're feeling like hangry, like you said, Effy, that's when we make mistakes, or we go for the things that, out of temptation or whatnot, maybe aren't the best choices. So I love that what you said about planning that into your schedule. If you're thinking in the morning, like, I should eat breakfast, but on a good day, you get up and you're like running out the door anyways, it's going to be hard for you to sit down and have breakfast if you haven't planned any extra time to have it into your regular routine. So allowing yourself, like, look at your schedule and think about what you want to eat this week, and think of, like you said, it doesn't have to be anything fancy or super gourmet. If you have any questions about like how to eat super simply, I think I should share some experiences in another podcast about like how I've kind of swung that in my like extremely tiny little Korean kitchen with like limited resources, because I could talk about it a lot. But yeah, I think planning, it's all about planning. It's about knowing your purpose. It's about really nourishing your tired body back up with just really colorful, nutrient-dense, balanced meals, and being mindful of how much you're eating at one sitting and chewing it really well. Get those digestive juices and enzymes stimulated so that they can do their job, and put things away properly, and so that you feel good after you eat. And the weight's going to balance out when you're taking good care of yourself. We promise you that.
Once your hormones are balanced, because we're taking care of ourselves, your body knows what to do. It's a really smart and intelligent being. So we just got to give it that support.
I'd like to ask what your thoughts are, Effy, before we kind of close, because we're kind of near the end here, of like preservatives and just how our food has changed. I mean, it's a big topic. That's a whole nother podcast. But is there anything that you would, because there's a difference, right? If you're steering more towards whole foods, okay, we don't expect you to eat fruits and vegetables all day long. But like when, there are ways that you can be looking at the food and seeing what's inside them. And there are some chemicals out there in a lot of our foods, I feel like, that are not helping with digestion, therefore slowing digestion, and the body doesn't know what to do with some of these foreign, things. So any advice or tips there?
So when it comes to food, yeah, I agree. It could be an entire podcast in its own, especially when we're talking about the way we're harvesting foods these days and how we're growing it. We could eat whole foods all day. I think the thought process, we can't survive on it, but we're talking about fish, meat, proteins, right? Our protein source. And then we're talking about vegetables, whole foods. So when we're looking at whole foods, we have the organic and then the regular. If it's something that you're thinking about health and avoiding certain toxins and so on, choosing from the dirty dozen, one is the best way because it doesn't break the bank and you're getting the foods that are going to be most sprayed, organically sprayed. They're still pesticides. They're just organic pesticides. So they're recognized a little bit better than in the body, and they're broken down a little bit better. But when it comes to regular foods that we're buying, whole foods that are sprayed and so on, the biggest issue is looking at the ones and knowing who you're buying from, I think, because a lot of these are hormone mimickers, and that's the problem. And they're hormone disruptors, and they're gut lining disruptors. And the one thing to think about is, especially for us here in North America, the way we grow our food is so different than, say, Europe. I have no problem eating gluten in Europe. I was in Greece last year and I was eating, chicken souvlaki like it was no tomorrow. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to bloat, but I want to enjoy the Greek food. No problem, because the way they cook, they harvest and they grow their food. So if you're not from North America, you might be luckier than the rest of us in terms of food options. But I think when it comes down to whether it's organic or inorganic, whether it's sometimes somewhat packaged, knowing where you're getting your food from, especially the whole foods. Do you know farmers nearby? Ordering from them directly, or knowing where your grocery store buys their products is going to be the main thing. it takes time. It takes some research. It's not easy. But this way we can avoid, because we're seeing more and more. One of the biggest one is going to be, and for some reason, if you guys remember the spray that they're doing right now on crops, I don't remember the name for it right now, but it is a big gut lining disruptor, and it just affects our digestive system, and that we're not absorbing, and it wreaks havoc and inflammation. So if we can choose, organic options from our Dirty Dozen, we're going to put ourselves in a little bit better area. But it's not only that, we're looking at our detoxification. Are we digesting normally? Are we evacuating normally? Are we drinking enough water to hydrate? Are we using coffee and other stimulants as our hydration, which it's not. So those little things that we do on a daily just really address. And sometimes I love writing a diet diary, because it gets me looking at the foods I'm eating and what I'm drinking and how I'm feeling after meals. And it gets me kind of regrouping myself to really be like, oh, what's going on? I'm much more busier. Let's plan some meals, because as much as we have healthy options out there, one, it costs more to eat out every day. So why not put that money towards buying groceries and, spending a Sunday afternoon, couple hours, and cooking up some food. And you can make it a family event with the kids and the husband and the wife and whoever, the dog, whoever's there. You can make it a family event. But when it comes down to it, know who you're buying from. Choose as much healthy options. Don't buy things you don't want to eat. I go to the grocery store, I see all the nice cookies. I think about all the times I was as a kid and loved them, Mrs. Christie, but I don't buy them, because when I'm going to crave them, if I do for some reason, I don't have them there to have them. So I find other options that I can use to satiate my cravings, like nuts or fruit or something else, depending again on what's available.
Yeah, such a good point. I love it. So I think it's like, even not just like you were talking about organic versus non-organic. And I think of more like, avoiding like the high fructose corn syrup, or if there's a ton of ingredients I can't pronounce, I don't get it. Like, because there are typically other options. Now I do shop at natural food stores, so I do have more options, but even at the conventional grocery stores, just looking at the labels and picking the ones that have less ingredients and more things that you can identify. I think that I trust that is better for the body. It's just, it makes sense. The body knows what to do with them. It recognizes it. It's a real food. It's not made in a lab. And yeah, so cool. Thank you for sharing those tips. That was great.
Yeah, thank you. And I think at the end of it, it's just do your best, right? And always be thinking about how you're feeding and nourishing yourself back up. And I think this is a good opportunity to close off the podcast. And I'd like to share a quote that Amy Porterfield said recently. And I think that we can also twist it and apply it to our diet. So her quote is, "You are in control of everything that you put into your schedule." Like, if it's in your schedule, you agreed to it. And I love that, especially for the really busy people out there. We are saying yes to everything that we put in our schedule. And when we have a really busy, full life and we're really stressed out, sometimes we need to check ourselves. Like, what can we say no to? Where can we make more room for ourselves? And like Effy said, how can we say yes to healthier eating and plan for that in our schedule? And at the same time, as much as we're in control of everything we put into our schedule, we're saying yes to that. We're also saying yes to the things we put into our body, right? And we have a choice there. So what are we saying yes to this week? I challenge you guys to think about that and think about it nice and hard in a way that inspires you, nourishes you, and fills you up in support of healthy, happy, balanced hormones.
Yeah, and just start small, I think that's the biggest thing that we know, right, about working with clients, is just don't try to do too much at once, but like just making like one big shift, okay, I know I need to stop eating at 10 o'clock at night. Just start there and do that for the next month, and then see what you see the successes that you have. And when you have a bad day, just, say it's okay. And, but I love what you said, Danielle. I'm all about choice. I feel like happiness is a choice. What we put in our bodies is a choice. It's it's all a choice. And sometimes we forget about that. We feel like we're up against the wall a lot. But if we just take a moment and like, okay, what's really important here? If we put ourselves first, which is sometimes hard for some people and parents too. And it's like, we really taking responsibility and knowing that we are in control and giving ourselves and honoring ourselves in that way, I think is really, for me, is a kind of a cool, a good message. And it's kind of been resonating through this whole podcast for me. So anyway, super fun. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Dr. Effy.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. I really had a good time, and I'm always here for more questions again. And I wish everyone in the group best of luck, and keep doing what you're doing, and keep working hard, and then just enjoy life and enjoy you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing your juicy wisdom with us today, Dr. Effy. And before you go, how can people find you if they're just listening in? Where can we find you on social, or what's your website?
My website is just my name as well as my social. It's Dr. Effy Germanis, ND, and then just .com or just ND for the Instagram.
Yeah, make sure you guys follow her on Instagram. She has so many amazing tips on there. So I'll be sure to link that so everyone can find you easily.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect.
All right. With that, let's close this off. Thank you, guys. It's been awesome.
Yay.
Wishing everybody amazing health and a wonderful day.
Blessings, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you so very much for tuning in to this episode of the Adrenal Fatigue podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review on iTunes, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you know someone who's struggling and could use some support with balancing their hormones and overcoming adrenal fatigue once and for all, please share this podcast with them. You can visit us at www.healyouradrenalfatigue.com to learn more about us and our adrenal fatigue recovery revolution.